Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments. Where tonight we're going to hopefully hear what you hear. We're going to bring together the TI-Nspire and the TI-Innovator Hub and make some sound and music. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus near Pittsburgh, where I use TI technology to make tough to teach, tough to learn concepts accessible to all my students. Tonight, we're really lucky to be joined by our two panelists, Stacy Thibodeau and Jessica Cahoot. Stacy holds a Bachelor's of Science in Biology and Chemistry, as well as a Master's degree in Educational Leadership from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. She's been in the science classroom for 21 years and currently teaches at Southside High School in Youngsville, where she teaches robotics, chemistry 1 and 2, and she has also taught biomedical science courses in Project Lead the Way program and chemistry 1 and 2 AP. She presents yearly at NSTA conferences and enjoys working with teachers who are learning how to teach in this new environment. So Stacy, it's great to have you with us tonight. And Jessica earned a Bachelor's of Science in General Biology from the College of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences at the University of Maryland, College Park, and a Master's of Arts in Teaching and Secondary Education from Goucher College. For the past 16 years, she has taught all levels of biology from on-grade level to AP at Reservoir High School in Howard County, Maryland. Recently, she has integrated STEM concepts into her biology classroom. Her students get to make real-life connections with science. She believes that STEM skills should be integrated into all math and science courses to help expose all students to the valuable skills needed for their future. So Jessica, we're really excited to have you with us as well.
Thanks, Mike. We're excited to be here too.
I'm excited that I'm hopefully gonna not have any more tongue twisters for the rest of the webinar. At this point, Jessica is going to discuss our agenda.
Well, welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk a little bit about coding and music. We'll start with a Name That Tune game to get you familiar with the TI-Innovator Hub. Then also as science teachers, we love to get into the science behind hearing, how that actually works, how speakers work. We're going to do some coding with doing some Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and reading some music and transferring that to some code. And then there's going to be a webinar drawing, and one of you will walk away with a really cool prize. So stick around to the end.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And Stacy is going to talk through our expected outcomes. Hey, Stacy, I can see you talking, but we can't hear you.
Sorry.
There we go.
Tonight we're going to do Python programming and understand its syntax. So TI makes it really easy for us to be able to understand Python programming. We're also going to use the TI-Nspire CX and the TI-Innovator Hub to create a program for songs. We're also going to understand how science behind hearing works and how sound works with the ear, and then also be able to bring this back to our classroom maybe tomorrow.
So cool. So we're expecting a large crowd tonight, so your audio is muted. Feel free to send any questions to Jessica or Stacy using the Q&A window on the right side of your screen, and we'll also be using the chat window to send general messages. As a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we'll provide a link to the event certificate of attendance at the conclusion of the webinar, as well as a link for the documents that Stacy and Jessica are using tonight. So without further ado, Stacy, you have control. Feel free to share your screen.
All right, thanks, Mike. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much all for joining us tonight. Tuesday nights are always my favorite nights because there's always a live webinar, and I always learn something not only from attending them, but also the participants in the chat. So please feel free to join in the chat. So like Mike mentioned, I teach chemistry over in Youngsville, Louisiana. We're a fairly new school, but about 2 years ago, I went to my principal and requested a robotics course. And the first thing I said is I teach chemistry, right? So I'm a chemistry teacher who teaches robotics. And so kind of a little bit about my story as we go about tonight and how I use TI technology to teach in my robotics class, but also to incorporate STEM into my chemistry class. Jess?
And I am Jessica Cahoot. I am a biology teacher in Howard County, Maryland. And I also teach marine science this year for the first year in about 13 years. So I'm really excited to bring that class back into our school. And it's become kind of my STEM playground where I've been able to really dive into, pun intended, coding with the class and really do some really fun things to get students interested in computer science while still learning science and marine science and all the concepts that go along with it.
Yeah, so Jess and I added our emails. If you have questions or you want information after this, how we do it in our classroom, obviously you're like, how did a girl from Maryland and Louisiana hook up? And at the same time, we also put our Twitters, not that we're like promoting ourselves, but as teachers, sometimes it's good to have our own professional learning network. And I find that Twitter is like my favorite source for that. I actually follow a lot of people who do STEM projects. And so if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and follow both Jess and I, and then you can kind of see some of the projects that we do. All right, so why STEM, why coding, why put that into our classroom? So I teach chemistry, I also have a robotics. Jess has biology and marine science. And so obviously if we're doing this webinar tonight, we both feel really strongly about STEM and coding in our classroom. So number one, hands down, collaboration. Without the collaboration that we have in our coding projects, I think students are lacking in the future development of that skill. A lot of times students are really scared to discuss and have comments, but within coding where everybody's new and everybody's trying to figure it out, that whole communication part, and then if you're doing some kind of engineering design or build type project, then you have to have that teamwork.
And communication is really key, and having teenagers or young people develop those communication skills that can lead them to, you know, really important careers, because those are going to be skills that they're going to need no matter what they get into. Being able to communicate their thoughts, be able to work in a team, be able to problem solve, all of those skills everyone needs to be successful and no matter what they do. And it's just building a really nice community within our classrooms by using these STEM projects as a reason to develop those skills within our students.
Other thing is the whole real world problems, right? So we're going to show you a couple of things that we do in our classroom. But if you can get the students to tie into something that's important to them, for example, tonight with music, so many students belong to band, or they play guitar on their own, or they took piano lessons as a kid because mom made them. Linking them to music and how to bring in what they do outside the classroom really gives them a buy-in and also gives them an outlet to show the class what they know in terms of something that's applicable to them.
Right, and it also shows it to themselves, because they might be really into music but not realize that they have a knack for coding or an interest in coding because they never thought it was something for them. But if they're able to tie their passion to some computer science, it might open even more doors for them.
Yeah, so some of the stuff we're going to show you tonight takes into account the connection between the science classroom and also how it applies to mathematics, and then bringing it into that STEM world where we're taking into account science mathematics concepts, but applying a technology concept associated with it. And Jeff kind of mentioned it too. So like, why do we do it? Like, number one issue and number one reason why I do coding and Jeff does coding is because we are preparing kids for careers that we don't even know about yet. As a junior level teacher, I feel very passionate about making sure my kids, when they leave my classroom, they're ready for some type of a career outside of school, and being able to provide them with STEM readiness skills to me is actually more important than teaching them chemistry concepts. But can you work together? Can you problem solve? Can you persevere through a problem? Then you're probably ready for a STEM workforce.
And the really cool thing about what we're going to be teaching you guys tonight is a whole encapsulated activity using Python, which is a marketable skill. So students could leave high school having, this experience with Python, which could help them get a job, right out of high school, or at least have that foundation to build upon. But Python, it's a programming language that a lot of people use, and students can do something with it.
So how did we get started? So Jess is a biology teacher by trade. I'm a chemistry teacher by trade. And we actually got started. We met at a workshop and sat through a presentation on a real world project. And we both hooked up. We had conversations. We exchanged emails and phone numbers. And I don't know, that was like, what, 6 years ago now? It feels like yesterday. So how did we get started with coding? Because obviously neither one of us are coding experts. Is that we use the 10 minutes of code from Texas Instruments. So the 10 minutes of code breaks it up. Tonight we're really using Python, but they also have it for TI Basic. And it's 6 to 7 units of instruction. And I'll show you on the website in a second. Units of instruction that have individual skill builders, and then an application that if you teach a core content and you just wanted to do maybe a fun Friday or a manic Monday and you wanted to do some coding with your students, it's entry level, it's all menu based. The activities are both student based and teacher based. Jess and I, yes, we spent our summer coding Python with each other. I can't believe I just said that. So we took 10 minutes of code for Python and taught ourselves, and then we would have our own Zoom calls to figure out, okay, I'm on Unit 2, Skill Builder 1. What are you on? And we just fed off of each other. And so you could work with your students individually. You could do it as a group project. You could do it, like I said, on a Friday, Monday, and then just teach them individually the individual lessons.
And the great thing about this is it's so accessible. Like, you just need the calculators. You don't need any fancy software. You just need the calculators, and students can start coding right away. I'm fortunate to have a class set of the TI-Nspire CX II this year. And so I'm starting my biology kids with, they've written their first line of code, just getting used to what programming is. And then I have all sorts of projects lined up for marine science that I really want to do some things with, but it's easy. Again, Stacy and I, we don't have any programming background or very little programming background, but we were able to pick this up pretty quickly and also teach our students and give them the opportunity to build those skills too.
So the whole STEM integration part, right? And so I'm going to show you the TI-Innovator Hub. If this is your first webinar or you've never seen it at TI-Innovator Hub, I'll show you kind of a little bit about how Jess and I use it in our classrooms. So Jess mentioned with the 10 minutes of code, you can do just Python, just basic. But then if you have the Innovator Hub, there's a whole separate set of 10 minutes of code with the Innovator Hub. So it gives you a foundation to integrate some STEM projects. Tonight, the activity we're going to show you is completely just with the handheld and the hub. There's no other accessories, but it allows for other accessories to be used, like the TI rover, which is kind of like an onboard robotics type automatic vehicle. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. A vehicle to show students how to drive, how to use different sensors. My kids actually love the rover.
Yeah, it's completely fun. So fun.
Yes. All right. So y'all ready to get started? I'm going to show you a few things first. I'm going to show you my Innovator Hub. And so tonight I have my hub that's plugged into the computer software. It just makes it easy to program on a webinar with the hub. But if I were plugging it in to my calculator, it's really cool because there are cables that tell me which port to plug in, and it tells me when it's connected. So if you want to notice the hub, I'm going to plug it in to my handheld. And so the light's on.
Are you showing your document camera?
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Got it? Okay, so sorry. So it shows me when I am plugged in to the hub that it's ready to go. So the hub itself does not need to be charged. If you purchase one, it comes with a cable, but that cable is there if you need an external power supply for additional pieces of equipment. But the hub itself runs off of the battery of the handheld. The hub has out ports for other STEM projects that you could plug in, like a motor or an LED light. There's in ports for different sensors. It has a breadboard port for other projects. That's where the rover plugs in, and that's the power port if I need additional electricity. There's a built-in brightness sensor that my students use with what's called an automatic dispenser project. This I2C port is part of the rover connectivity, and then this is connecting to my handheld. And then for tonight, there is a sound output of the hub. So again, for tonight, we actually don't need any additional equipment. So I'm going to plug my hub back in.
And while Stacy's
And
getting this set up.
I love the fact that the light turns on because it tells me that I'm all connected. And so if the kids are like, Miss Tibb, it doesn't work, I'm like, is your light on? Because if your light's not on, then we're not connected. So.
And it's nice that it's encased in plastic, so the circuit board can't get damaged by teenagers, which is really nice to work with when you're dealing with, 20 to 30 teenagers that aren't always nice with equipment. So it stays, yes, teenagers can be rough on stuff.
Yeah, and you'll hear them hit the ground. You're like, oh, it's in a plastic. I'm okay. And so the Innovator Hub has TI Launchpad technology. And so when we first got it introduced, they were like, this is like big TI technology that's encased in a plastic, in a system so that kids can learn how to use what is necessary for those future STEM careers. So TI website, Jess, I'm good?
Yep.
Okay.
Good. So
where is this activity? I told you guys that this activity doesn't require anything. So this entire activity is under the STEM projects. So I went to the main TI website. You will get all of these documents, like Mike mentioned at the end. And if I explore STEM projects, this is probably my favorite page because it has all of the fun stuff. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through and bam, here we are, making music with code. And so this activity is in both basic for the Inspire and the 84 Plus CE, and then it is in Python now. So this activity is huge. I just want to tell you with this 1 hour webinar, there's no way we could do it all. I did this with my robotics students, and I think it took me like 8 days to go through the entire program activity. So it kind of walks you through, like, if you need to add objectives to your classroom. There are different PDFs that you can download. So the file for the Inspire is called a TNF file, a TI-Nspire file. So that's this document here. There's a handout for students if you wanted to print a handout for students to follow, or if you wanted to maybe post it on your learning management system, there's a quick reference document that I'll show you guys in the presentation. There's some videos for us as teachers. We're like, oh, I can't do this. Stacy, Jess, you're cool. I think what you do in your classroom is too hard for me. There are some videos. Not only can you go back on this webinar, like Mike mentioned, there's some videos that help you write your program and learn about the calculator. And then there's a video for each of the parts. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that's where you can find the actual document for the activity that we're doing tonight.
And the great thing about this activity is, as Stacy kind of mentioned, you can pick and choose. You don't have to do every component. It's really broken down into activities, challenges, and these extra activities. So you could, pick one item that you might want to use that could take, a few minutes at the end of class if you're looking for some extra things to do with your students, or you could build a whole unit around it like Stacy did. So it's really what you want, and everything is editable. So you can take the TNS file and make it what you want. You can read Word things, you can take slides out, you can add questions in. It's really what you want to make out of it.
Yeah, so once it's downloaded to your computer, it's yours. You can do whatever you need with it. Send it out to the students, have them transfer it, however. So you ready to get started, Jess?
I am.
All right, so I'm going to go through the document. So this is if you're new to this is the premium teacher software. So I would project this, right, for all of my students to be able to see. I have also sent the file to them using the TI-Nspire Navigator network. Or if I don't have Navigator, I could have put it on my learning management system or Google Drive, and they could use a program called TI Connect to transfer that file to their individual handhelds. So just to kind of let you know, that's how you can transfer the files. And this is exactly what I did with my students. I was like, hey guys, let's play with some Python and some sounds. We had kind of looked at sound before, just really making noise, not really music. And so this was our first into music. So are we ready? What this is this is in the way TI has kind of set it up, this is a Python editor page. And so this is where the Python program is written. So a few things. The way this application is set up, it's coming from a simulations import. So because Python is such a huge program and normally is run on like a computer, in order to run on a calculator or a handheld, we can't have all of it in the working memory. So when we need something, we do what's called an import for that module. So for this activity, it comes from an import called simulation. And I really like this part. The comment or the hashtag, like my kids say, the grayed out part is not part of the program. It's not an executable line of code. And so you can kind of put instructions or put lines of code maybe that you want to try with something else. And so having these instructions here, you didn't have to have like a printout or whatever. So it says, make sure your hub's connected. My hub's connected. To run this Python program, it says to select menu, run, or the key sequence Control-R. The cool part about using TI for your programming is that it is all menu-driven. So I'm going to show you what I mean by menu-driven. So menu-driven is that you actually don't have to know how to program. You just have to know how to find where the code exists within the menus. And so it says select menu. Again, I'm showing students this. This is my teacher software. Every time I press a different button on the handheld, it's projected. My students can see the red button. So it said to go to menu, number 2 to run, and then number 1 to run. Eventually, they learn it's Control-R. And part of what I do in my classroom, Jess may chime in and do something different, is that I keep a running list. I have a couple of sheets of that, chart paper of all of the commands we learn throughout the year. So that way I can say, remember when we did this project and we did this command, here it is, and this is where it is in the menu. Jess, do you kind of have something similar?
Yeah, I totally stole that from you. So I started
Okay.
doing that myself so that we can go back and say, look, we learned this command. This is what we need to do that to, whatever we need to do in the program, we've learned that these are the things that we've learned and what we can adapt to whatever we want to create.
And then it's a good visual. So last year was my first year doing this course, and we were hybrid last year. So I saw my students every other day and like every other Friday. So continuity in programming was not there. So I had to keep a running list also for them, but for me to remember, what did we do 2 Fridays ago kind of thing. And so I stuck with it again this year, and it kind of helps, to have that visual. So anyway, we did menu, we did number 2 run, we did number 1, and I'm going to run. So the last page, if you notice, that was on 1.3. Now I'm on 1.4, and it's called a Python shell page. This is the page that the program actually runs in, and you can see I was running it earlier, and it kind of tells me at the bottom, it says press enter to play number 1. So I'm going to press enter, and all systems are go, that we can hear it. Yes, let's see.
Back it up a little bit. We heard it really well first. There you go. So if you know the song, put it in the chat.
Awesome. I saw a couple
Yes.
people type it in the chat already.
Ken and Joshua got it.
Yes. And so the kids get excited. They're like, I recognize that. And so then I pause and I'm like, how did you recognize that? And they're like, well, because there was a pattern and I've heard it before. I'm like, oh, so there's patterns to sounds, right? And so now I'm starting to get them thinking it's not just about a note or a frequency, it's a pattern, which is really big. If you're in a science education, that we're always looking for patterns and things.
It's a cross-cutting concept.
Right. That's right. We're ready for number 2?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Too many screens.
Type it in the chat. That's right. We got a lot of them. Excellent. Yeah, take me out to the ball game. Awesome.
And this one's long, sorry. Perfect. All right, so we could do number 3. Number 3 is even longer, but you get the gist, right? So I didn't program this, Jess didn't program this, but we're going to show you throughout the night how you can take music and actually familiar songs and bring it to students that they can end up writing the code for them. Y'all excited about that?
Awesome.
All right.
So when we, introduce students to sound, we also, as science teachers, at least I want to, we want to kind of connect it to how we can hear. Like, what is the biology of hearing? And so thinking about the structure of an ear and what's really making the sound. And so we have an opportunity to bring in some biology, which is really fascinating stuff. If you think about the structure of an ear, other than decorating with earrings, they're pretty cool. You have this ear canal that brings in these sound waves that it's really just air. As the air molecules are moving and these pressure waves are, from my vocal cords, as my vocal cords are stretching and moving, they're causing this change in air pressure. And these waves are interacting with our eardrums. And this thin membrane is vibrating, which then interacts with our middle ear bones, which then sends this vibration into these little tiny hairs that move back and forth. And as these little tiny hairs move back and forth, we have been sending neurotransmitters to sensory neurons, and that sends a signal to our brain. So these action potentials, based on the frequencies of these vibrations, are our brain is processing that information to make us understand the sounds that we're hearing, which I think is really fascinating and really cool. And we can really link that to volume, and volume has to do with the amplitude of the waves that are coming through. So the higher the volume, the larger the amplitude. Also pitch, and as those frequencies change, we have the increased pitch, and we have that increased frequency. And that frequency we can measure in hertz, which are cycles per second. And the human ear, most of us can hear around between 20 to 20,000 hertz. As we get older, we might not be able to hear those higher frequencies, which is kind of fun to do in a classroom of teenagers. So they may be able to hear some of the higher frequencies than us. But there are some other organisms that can hear a variety of frequencies beyond our scope. Like dogs can hear up to 40,000 hertz, and bats can hear up to 100,000 hertz. And whales can hear really low, as low as like around 10 to 20 hertz, which I think is pretty cool. So based on the biology of our ears, and what we can interpret the frequencies by our brains, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, Joshua said it's a good litmus test for what you can actually hear. And using the hub, the kids want to have, they want to play the different notes, and then you can actually hear, can you hear that or not? So, sorry, I hit the wrong button and another software is opening up, so I apologize.
Yeah, so some of the other frequencies we might play tonight, I don't know if you have any dogs around, but they might perk up a little bit depending on how kind of high it reaches. So we'll see how that goes. So
all right, so we're gonna.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm trying to get out of that program. I apologize, y'all.
No worries. One of the first activities that we're going to demonstrate for you guys is a simulation that deals with violin strings. And so getting students to realize, you know, as the violin string vibrates, how that makes a sound and associating that with a specific frequency. And then we're also going to be introducing the Python code along with that. So it kind of works together with understanding how the string moves and the frequencies that it makes. And so this is a simulation. So there isn't really any coding that necessarily goes on with this particular activity. So again, you can kind of build the skills with your students. And as you can pick and choose which ones you want, and they get more complex as you kind of continue through. So if you want them to do more coding, some of the activities that we're going to be talking about towards the end of this, you can kind of show them. But if you just are introducing them, a simulation like this could be really helpful in showing how these vibrating violin strings relate to frequency.
So we're ready to see the violin?
Again, if you have any dogs in the background, they might.
No, well, I do, but they're in the front. Hopefully they won't hear.
Yeah, we'll see.
So this is, again, this is the Python editor page. When I go to run it, it tells me the same thing. When I hit Control R, and it says press enter.
And so this is showing you the vibration of the violin string and the different frequencies, and then having students kind of think about, well, what's happening? How are the strings changing with the frequency changing? And now it's getting pretty high there.
That was getting high. I kept pulling it further and further.
Well, just, you know, and as teachers, we also have to kind of plan for this too, because can you imagine you have like, I don't know how many hubs you have. I have eight hubs going off at that high pitched frequency at once would be pretty painful. So,
Jess mentioned about the ear and how it's a push of the airwaves right through the ear canal and then vibrating. And so the code or the actual line of code that's used for Python is an actual frequency. And so when you write your first program, this would be one where you just run the simulation. The students could actually set the different frequencies and a time and then kind of play around with it. And again, however many hubs you have in your classroom, it kind of gets a little loud, but at the same time, they're learning to, figure out, I like that sound, I don't like that. So that's a higher frequency. Maybe if I do it for a shorter period of time, and then they can kind of figure some things out after that simulation.
Yeah, and be able to kind of play with those frequencies, running their code, hearing the sound. It helps them kind of make sense of it all. So when they are actually choosing those frequencies to make music, it's a little bit more familiar.
So like I mentioned, there's the editor page, which is what I'm on. Notice this is different. This is a different activity. This is where you could have them actually play around with the sounds like I was mentioning. So I want to show you guys how this was actually coded. So a while ago, I mentioned that you have to import from wherever your library is. So I'm going to go back to the handheld screen. So I'm going to go to menu. Joshua, you asked about 1-to-1 or 2 per hub. Jess has 8. I'm very blessed. I have 24 hubs. So I've written lots of grants. I know. So, but I don't have that many rovers. I only have 8 rovers. But I have a lot of hubs. So I have 24 hubs. I have 3 per table. One of my robotics classes has 31 students, and the other one has 29. So we share hubs. And they just kind of adjusted to it. Last year when we were hybrid, it was really easy because I had enough hubs. Everybody had kind of had their own. But yeah, I have a lot of hubs.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. No, sorry. But you can share, right? So I do make every kid write the program. This is not, oh, you work with your partner and you both, nope. Every kid has to write the program. Everybody will then turn and plug in, and I have to hear or see or whatever the program executed for every single student. I do.
Yeah, and that's how I work with I have really 1 hub per 3 to 4 students. So everybody writes their program, and then they just unplug their hub and pass it along and run it. And then they work together to troubleshoot. If one of them, it doesn't work, then they can all kind of help each other say, oh, you forgot, a quote or parentheses or something. And so they have that time to really collaborate and problem solve and work together.
That's what we were talking about earlier, that whole problem solving, troubleshooting, collaboration. Okay, so I mentioned earlier it was all menu driven, so I just wanted to kind of show you. So all I did was press menu, right? And a while ago I used run to run the program. So for us today, all we're worried about is the TI Hub. There are a multitude of other Python programming webinars if you're interested in others. I know there were 3 throughout the course of the summer, and then there's been a couple so far this school year. So same place you found this webinar, you can find others on Python, and I'm sure there's some for future dates. So this is the TI Hub menu, and so I mentioned we had to import. So that's the very first thing, line of code that you have to do. Otherwise, you can type in all kind of cool code and it's like, I don't understand what you're saying because it doesn't have the import. So that's where we got the import from. I also mentioned that these were all built-ins. And so what a built-in is that the hub itself has 4 built-ins. It has a color output, which is a color RGB LED. So it's an LED that has red, green, and blue. There's a light output, which is just red and it's on or off. There's the sound, which is working with tonight, and then there's the brightness as an input that will pick up on light levels. So we're here under the sound output, and there's 2 different types of way you can have the sound. Tone, which is what we've been doing so far tonight, which is just a frequency and a time. And then we'll get to later tonight with notes, which by far was my student's favorite one for this. So I just wanted to kind of show you where that is. And so if I went ahead and just put this in as a line of code, it's still menu, it's still drop down, it still tells me, okay, so my frequency, it said, and it went real fast, was from 0 to 8,000 hertz. And so I tell my students, go somewhere, I don't know, 550. And then if I tab over to time, it asks me your duration or time is from 0.1 to 100 seconds. I don't let my students do 100 seconds because that's really a long time. So I tell them 1 second at max, especially when we're playing around. And tab is our friend in Python because it gives us over to the next. So that's it. That's literally how you can program in Python with sound.tone. Sorry, Jess.
And sorry, I keep trying to cut you off. And it's really helpful, like, to prompt, like, for students that don't know the syntax or not sure what range to put this in, it prompts them. So, like, it's a really great learning tool as they figure this out.
Yes. So this activity is huge, right? So we're going to jump to the speaker activity, and Jessica's going to teach us a little bit about how speakers work, because we're going to maybe make one. I'll show you how we can make one later.
Yeah, so the speaker activity is just really gets into how speakers work. So it really gives, and again, this is another activity. So it gives a background about how speakers work. So it gets into how the electrical voltage gets turned into an air pressure wave based off the coils that are around these magnets. As the voltage goes through, you're going to have the speaker pulling in and out air, which creates those pressure waves. And then there's another simulation that goes with this to kind of visualize those effects. Those animations are programmed in here. And so we can see, just like we did with the violin, but we have that simulation import. We have those reminder directions on how to run the program. And when we run it, we can see the changes in voltage. We can see the speaker, we can see the moving in and out of the speaker, and then the changes in pressure waves based off of the frequency. And so Stacy can change the frequency. So as the frequency lowers, how does that change the voltage waves along with the air pressure waves? And so students can start making some correlations between voltage and the air pressure. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of math in here as well that you can tie in with your students with music. There's so much math in music. There's so much science in music, and it's just like music is that universal connection between people that we all, I feel like most everybody loves music of some sort. And so really breaking it down and really seeing and visualizing what's happening, what's creating those sound waves, what's creating that air pressure waves in order to make the sound, and how that, when frequency changes, what happens because of that. And students can do this on their own, so they can change it, they can push those up and down arrows in order to see those changes, so they hopefully can make that connection on their own. And as Stacey's kind of running through, there are questions in the student doc that you could assign your students to, you know, make sure and check and have some formative assessment before moving on to another activity to make sure they understand how sound is really working through a speaker. And again,
remember, I'm sorry. I mentioned that once you download this document, it's yours, right? So if I only want to do activity 1 and 2 today and then add some questions, I can save that and then pull up the same and then add just the challenge 1 or challenge 2. You can change the questions on here. Jess mentioned that it was like a formative assessment. You know, depending on what you need for your day, it could be your exit ticket or your bell ringer or whatever for, you know, for your class to get that formative grade for the day. It's yours once you download it.
Yeah, completely edible.
So,
and it can set up a really cool experiment.
I know, right? So part of this we talked about when I showed you what the coding looks like. This is also one of the documents that comes from the website, and I really like it. and I actually, we're a G Suite district, so everything's on Google Classroom. I actually gave it to my kids, and I had them pull it up and open it up, and I asked them, what do they think is happening at each? And kept referencing, coming back and forth. So we already talked about from the module _name import. We imported the TI Hub. Every single time you start a new program, you have to import whatever modules you want. So that's really crucial. We did sound.tone so far, and that was a specific frequency for a specific time. And so there's an example of it, and we kind of saw how that worked with the whole violin activity. One thing we didn't talk about was a sleep. And so a sleep statement is just a pause in the execution of the lines of code so what happens is the handheld sends the code to the hub and the hub executes it. But I don't necessarily want every single line of code executed at the same time. So a sleep statement basically sleeps the handheld from sending anything for a specific time to the hub to allow the hub to execute whatever that program was for that time. Really big when you're trying to have some type of an output like this for a sound, or the rover like I was talking about. Sleep statements in a rover is so crucial. Sleep statements in music have to do with how long you want that sound or tone to play for. So that's a whole lesson in itself that I actually spent an entire 55 minutes with students getting them to understand that you can set the tone and a frequency and a time all you want, but if you don't sleep for the same time, it's going to try to go hurry up and play the next tone, and then it's not music, it's just noise. So that does help to have that conversation with students. I did mention that hashtag or the # to text comment out. So it grays out whatever line is there, and so it does not execute that line of code. You can always comment or uncomment out lines of code. I've done that working with students. I'm like, oh, this didn't work. Let's comment it out and see if that's that line of code, or put it back in, or like for tonight, we saw it was like instructions on how to do the next thing. Where we're headed tonight is sound.notes. And so notes can be played as well. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you that. This is a really great document to have those meaningful conversations with students of what the actual code means.
And for students that know how to read music, the note feature is really nice and really easy for them to kind of put it all together.
So this is a project that my students did last year. We haven't done it yet this year.
You're still,
I don't have it in Python.
you're still on the you're still in the teacher software.
Sorry.
But it's a cool project.
I can't. It's like it's hard for me to see what I'm doing. I'm sorry, y'all. Now you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is last year, and the reason why I said it's last year is because we had to wear gloves because we couldn't share anything. And so it's really hard to sanitize and clean a wire and a breadboard and mail cables in between classes. So this project took the same concept of programming notes and sounds with the hub, but instead of just hearing it from the underside of the sound output from the hub, we actually created an external speaker. And we did that based on the same thing Jessica was mentioning, that there's an electromagnetic signal that's sent that pushes and is amplified by something. It pushes that sound wave and it's amplified by something. And so this would use as external power source from some batteries, and it's plugged into a breadboard port. And then there is a magnetic wire, which is kind of hard to see, that's wrapped around a nail, the nail is shoved into the styrofoam cup, and there's a magnet in there. And between the two, it makes that electromagnetic signal, and then the sound is then amplified through the styrofoam cup. This was like our first true engineering design plus circuitry projects last year, and the kids absolutely loved it. I didn't create this. This is a TI Path to STEM project activity that you could try with your students as well. This is not something that Stacy was all cool and did by herself. But it's an extension, right? So like if you wanted to add more to your content. So Jess, you want to talk about Twinkle Twinkle?
Yes, let's talk about Twinkle Twinkle. So Twinkle Twinkle is one of those songs that a lot of people know. I have nightmares from second grade violin class of trying to learn Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's about, but it's something that all students could at least get into. So if they don't know how to read music or they haven't read music in a long time, it's still accessible to them. And there are some things that us as teachers could help modify to, help them be successful with this. So we have Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. We had the music notes for that. And we would want to think about which notes what they represent and the timing of those notes too. So are they quarter notes? Are they half notes? How do the notes relate to how that music is going to be played? And so we have two different variations of this in this document where one is a little bit more complicated and one is a little bit easier. So the first one, which Stacy's going to be playing, is just looking at the notes and the timing and playing the notes per time, using those sleep statements in order to allow the note to play the appropriate amount of time, and then also another sleep statement to give it a rest between each note. Did you want to?
Yay!
So this simulation kind of helps students get familiar with the notes, what type of notes they are, so that they could then take that information, use the sheet music, and start a program. And yes, if your second grade son can do it, Joshua, then so can your student.
So my daughter actually plays piano, and when Jess and I got asked to do this webinar, I went to her and I was like, okay, I need you to teach me how to read music. I need you to teach me how to understand, what the notes are and everything. So yeah, I think piano is probably a best start for it. I want to show you guys something that is in the presentation that you're going to come out with the actual PowerPoint. So this was, you can see it, Jess, just making sure. Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. So this is what I did last week, and so I have a guitar kid who, he's just amazing. He has blown away all of these projects. He's never coded a day in his life, and he is way advanced just because he loves to learn. And he took out his guitar sheet music. Here's, that's our Inspire, that's our hub. Over here in the top left-hand corner is a document I'm going to show you that took the notes and on the backside the frequencies of what they meant, and he took music from his guitar class and programmed it on the hub. That is the power of STEM, right? It's not Miss Thibodeau, Miss Kahoot made me do this activity, he made it his. And so anyway, I didn't get a good video of it. It's really hard with 31 kids in that class to get a good music video with the sound and everything, but anyway. Yeah. So this is a handout that,
Ken asked if you could do chords, and you cannot do chords. You can only play one note at a time, but maybe you could get multiple hubs together and play a melody together, time it correctly. Everyone hits start all at the right time.
Right. So this is what I give my students. So last week we had a project and I asked them to play their own music selection. And if they didn't know how to read music, then I put up the Super Mario Brothers song with just the notes, and they programmed it with the frequencies based on TI recommends the 4th or 5th octave. So if it was a C, they did sound dot tone open parentheses 262, and we pretty much stayed around the quarter note for the whole time. So that this document is coming to you. That way you can work with your students on that. I know we're getting short on time. I feel like I'm talking so much. Jess, you want to talk about STEM projects if they want to borrow?
Yeah, and so if you're interested in checking out this particular project or any of the others, you can actually borrow equipment if you don't have it. So whether it's calculators, if it's hubs, or anything that you need for each of the projects, you can go to the STEM projects website, which is the TI-STEMprojects.com, and you can click here and put in information about you, your school, what projects you want to do. The STEM team will reach out to you and even set up a one-on-one consultation if necessary to kind of go over any ideas you have and any help you need. So a lot of the projects now have all those ancillary videos to kind of help support you as you go through. But if you still need support, the STEM team is really great about reaching out and answering those questions. And so, definitely check this out and don't be afraid by being limited by the technology, because they will definitely help you out and provide it for you.
So Robert asked about 2 hubs being synchronized in time. That's more than I know, but I guess maybe you could try, depending on the time when you press Control R. That might definitely be a future webinar maybe, or have more conversation about that. So definitely check it out with the TI STEM team. Reach out to Jess and I. We're just like you guys. We're just classroom teachers. We just want to have fun with kids. We just want them to be ready for the future job market. If you have other questions, your educational technology consultant, which I have the link, can also help you guys out. You have a regional person that is a definite wealth of knowledge and information to help you guys out. So thank you all for showing up tonight. It was a lot in 1 hour, Jess. That could be like a whole 2-hour conference session, huh?
I know. It was so much fun. So thank you all for being here. And just remember, you can do a lot of stuff with this program. It's a low floor, high ceiling type thing where, your kids don't have to code Twinkle Twinkle. They can really, by showing them those simple commands, they can really code any song that they want. It's pretty awesome. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Stacy and Jessica. We're going to start wrapping things up tonight. As both Stacy and Jessica mentioned, it'd be great for you guys to continue the conversation about some of the excitement that was generated tonight on social media. So feel free to check us out on any of those major social media outlets. If you have any last-minute questions, please try to get those asked. I know Jessica and Stacy will do their best to get them answered, and it also might be good just to send them an email. That might be a faster way, or reach out to them on Twitter. As mentioned earlier, one lucky winner is receiving tonight a TI graphing calculator, and tonight's lucky winner is, drumroll, Donna Pinkerton. So Donna, congratulations. We'll be in touch over email in the next couple of days to get you some more information about that, Donna, but congratulations on receiving a free TI graphing calculator. To receive a certificate of attendance for tonight, go ahead and click the link in the chat window. Also listed is a link for the documents that Jessica and Stacy used tonight. And if you're watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. And if you're having any problems with the links tonight, have no fear. You'll automatically get a follow-up email in a couple days. And that follow-up email will contain all the links that you might want for the certificate, the documents, and the recording as well. After the webinar is over, if you need to get a hold of us for any reason, feel free to give us a call or drop us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, once you leave the webinar, a brief survey will automatically appear in your browser. Your feedback guides us as we plan future online events, and we really hope you share your thoughts in the post-webinar survey. Huge thanks to Stacy and Jessica. I want to give them an extra kudos. They didn't grow up as coders. This is a pretty new thing that they've decided to get their feet wet in, and I'm just overly impressed with how much they've learned in such a short period of time. So, Stacy, Jeff, thanks so much for putting everything together tonight.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
And thanks to everyone else for joining us tonight. We hope to see you back online real soon. Have a great night.